Greetings from New York, everyone, the world capital of PhotoShelter headquarters. This is Alan Murabayashi with Sarah Jacobs here. For the live broadcast of I Love Photography, you can tweet at us at #ILovePhoto. And for everyone listening to us on the podcast, hello on the podcast. And you should be watching us on YouTube because then you can see all the photos and our pretty faces. Hey, Sarah Jacobs.
Hi, Alan. How you doing?
And okay, we have... as you were commenting before we went on the air, we have a lot of great photography this week.
We do. It's all really, really beautiful work.
Not so much gadget heavy, although I think we have one or two of those, but more photography.
Mm-hmm.
And let's start off right away with a sad note. You know, nobody said it's easy or safe being a conflict photographer. On the other hand, I wouldn't say that we get used to conflict photographers passing away, but you expect someone who's been doing it for a long time to, obviously their risk increases over time. You don't really expect a 26-year-old conflict photographer to be sort of brutally killed, trying to photograph the effects of the conflict, not like I'm trying to be a war photographer for the sake of being a photographer, but to try to bring some exposure to this stuff. And this week, the body of Camille Lepage was found in the Central African Republic, a country that most people have never even heard of. Found murdered in a car. Nobody really knows what happened at this point. The French government has declared that they're going to get to the bottom of this and spare no resource in bringing the perpetrators to justice. Camille was just at the New York Times photo review like a month ago and impressed a lot of people with her work, and then went back to the CAR and is now dead at 26. Just kind of tragic. She had a PhotoShelter website, so we got a bunch of inquiries in regards to using her photos. It's just lovely stuff.
Yeah, really tragic, and the fact that she wasn't even caught in crossfire. I mean, that's not really what her work was about. You know, it really was about the humanitarian aspect of the culture, and it's still rough stuff. But
I mean, I just don't understand kind of the indiscriminate killing of journalists.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I understand that they view it as propaganda, or they view them as potentially being agents from other governments, etc. But you're gonna kill a 26-year-old woman? That's insane to me. It's just insane to me. So this is Time Lightbox. There have been a ton of tributes. There were some really moving blog entries from people who knew Camille. And just really sad. So check out her work and the nice tribute to Camille Lepage over on the Time Lightbox. Switching gears for a second here, the Naked Eye Celebrity Camera Auction and Benefit Show with my least favorite photographer in the world,
James
Franco.
Yes, this is New York's.
Tell us about that. Yeah.
Yeah, this is on a happier note. This is New York's Queer Experimental Film Festival, and they do an auctioning off of naked cameras, which is 35mm disposable cameras that have been given to artists and actors, any type of artist, drag queens, etc. This year includes James Franco, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Amy Sedaris, Parker Posey. So some really great names, and they've just taken the camera, done whatever they want with it, and the auction is on eBay, so you can bid if you wanna get one.
Now, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, that's a guy I can get behind.
Yeah.
He's a talented little guy.
I know, and look,
Franco.
He's beating out Franco, which makes me very happy.
Yeah, I mean, these are not expensive in the realm of expensive, $870. But then again, you're just buying a disposable camera. But don't get Franco's, because he's going to put some weird pics on it. You don't want those photos.
You don't want those. You're right. You're totally
right. I saw I think it was on Twitter. I forget what it was. Somebody was like, yeah, there was this super huge line in Union Square, and I didn't know what it was, so I kind of followed the line, and it went into Barnes and Noble, and I went up to the thing, and there was James Franco talking about his new book. I was like, oh my God, Franco.
That was John Granderfeld, who works here at PhotoShelter.
Oh, was it? Oh,
yeah,
man.
He was featured on Gothamist. Yeah. Yeah, he took a video, and it lasted 3 minutes of him following the line, which is just insane. Long line. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, whatever. Go bid on anything but James Franco for my sake. Thank you. The PDN Photo Annual. PDN, obviously a great magazine, talks about the industry stuff. PDN also produces a number of conferences and competitions. We love the PDN 30, so 30 emerging photographers, but then they also have the Photo Annual, which covers, I guess it's sort of the creme de la creme of the year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In different categories: advertising, corporate, magazine, personal, photo books, etc., etc., etc. You liked some of the student work this year.
Yes, I thought, I looked through all the categories, and really the student work is probably some of the best and most impressive in my eyes. Really like Andrew Lehman's. He's a student at the Savannah School of Art and Design, and he created a series that explores what he calls conjuring feelings of intimacy and solitude through manufactured and found interactions. And the shots actually remind me a lot of early Stephen Shore. Kind of this like bright flash, like this shot in particular of the food.
This is such your style.
I know. I mean, I love it. I love it. It's very simple. It's, kind of poppy colors and patterns, and I love it.
In fact, I think I've seen photos like this in your Instagram feed.
You probably have. You probably have. Yeah, there was also Amy Davis in the student category, and she recreated historical paintings and took them in New York City apartments, which I just love, because, I mean, who wants to take a photo in a New York City apartment? Like,
it's pretty, I mean, this is pretty creative, and it's, she's using this nice window light, and it looks nice.
Yeah, it looks really nice, but you can still tell, oh, this is a really small, cramped, kind of crappy apartment.
Well, and this I love.
Yeah, this is beautiful. Yeah.
What is it? Is it, see, I'm terrible with art.
Girl with a pearl, you're
right. Yeah, girl with a pearl. Thank you very much. I never took any art courses, so that's maybe I should read a book or something. That's the PDN Photo Annual at pdnphotoannual.com, and I have to say I've been really liking this layout that they've been using. They use the same sort of layout for the PDN 30.
Yeah.
But nice and big, and it's sort of that square. People are going to always say, oh, Instagram, the square. But there were many cameras that shot square before. I just want to point that out, like Hasselblad and Rolei. So, people who didn't grow up with film cameras, it wasn't Instagram that invented the square.
It was not, no.
So Petapixel, we love Petapixel. They find so much stuff. I don't know how they find all this stuff.
So much stuff.
So much stuff. I know people submit to them as well, but they find a lot of stuff, and this was great. So this is you know how I feel about the selfies.
I mean, yeah.
So these, it's an ad for a Brazilian stock photo agency that I guess got the rights to distribute the National Geographic collection, and they were trying to figure out ways to promote the collection without just showing kind of like, oh, here's an animal. So they did a whole series of animal selfies. I don't know whether it's like computer graphics or they just sort of composited stuff together, but they're hilarious.
They are hilarious, and they composited these things, all this stuff together to make it look like the animal is doing some mirror selfies there. Yeah,
it is like a panda with like his phone, and it has the flash going off in an elevator, and a koala. I mean, it's just really creative stuff, and you can see some of the sketches that the art director did.
Yeah. I feel like this series, this campaign is a really great example of when good copy and good art direction come together, because the tagline for this campaign is, there are a lot of bad animal pictures out there. National Geographic collection, the best of nature images are here.
Fantastic.
So, yeah, really good pairing, creative concept, love it.
I think the gorilla was my favorite. Just because of the pose, kind of like being like
over the shoulder.
The beefcake dude, like kind of posing.
Yeah, he's looking over his shoulder there. And he's got a fun iPhone cover, the gorilla. So good.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Every culture has their idiosyncrasies, particularly when it comes to marriage. We live in New York City, so we see obviously like a lot of different tourists coming to town to get married. I've always kind of lived downtown, or I have for the last 15 years or so, and I've always seen over by the World Financial Centers a lot of Chinese tourists who like to get their photos taken because they love marble. Marble, I guess, is like good luck for them, as is the color red, and etc. So anyway, I guess what I'm trying to say is that the wedding photography for the Chinese has a lot of symbolism, at least for some of them, as it does for a lot of different types of cultures. And we came across this article in the New York Times. There are 3 wedding studios that cater towards Chinese and Chinese tourists, where they set up all of these like elaborate staged narratives. And they have wardrobe and a makeup and like a full day package. And the thing that sort of blew me away, when we talk about the business of photography, these packages cost, what was it, $2,000 to $8,000 per session.
Yeah. Wow.
And and it was run. It is run by a Chinese female business owner. And I just thought it was a perfect example of someone really understanding a niche market. Obviously, if you're not in this world, you would not know that this was like an opportunity, so you would never like invest in this stuff. But here's a case of someone who's like, hey, they want to dress up as like a former Chinese emperor. I'm going to have the costume and the set, and I'm going to put this together, and then charge them like $8,000 for this stuff.
Amazing. I've seen a more simple version of something like this where it's a video recreating how the couple met. It dramatizes it, but never this elaborate. This is
elaborate.
These over the top, crazy.
Yeah, and the photographer is definitely getting into it in terms of like telling him how to pose. I got to think, if you're the photographer, you're doing this every day.
Yeah.
You got to get a little bit cynical about it.
Yeah, I would hope so.
It's like, oh, you want the teddy bear again? Okay, well, this is how you're going to hold the teddy bear. But this shot I loved. I guess it's one of the bride looking through the selection of dresses. And the name of this place, L'Affection. So they have like this French thing going on. So the Chinese people come over to New York and they're like, let's go to the French photo studio and look at this rack of 24 wedding dresses in all these different styles, and then let's dress up and hold a teddy bear. I mean, it's just fascinating to me.
It is. It is.
We don't actually get to see any of the final products, but I'm sure that if you Googled for L'Affection, you could find it. This was great too. So Nicholas Hopkins and Ginny Chow. So it's a white groom and a Chinese bride. And the guy says, we're going to do one in the Chinese tradition and one in an American style in Boston. And he goes, I don't care. I'm marrying a Chinese girl. That's cool. It's great. He's wearing kind of a traditional hat that looks, I dare say, in my cultural insensitivity, it looks a little silly.
Yeah, on him, it looks a little silly.
Speaking of Asia, I was in Vietnam last year, and more so than any other Southeast Asian country that I visited, Vietnam had a lot of motorbikes. Scooters, small one-stroke motorcycles, etc. Everything that would fall under the category of motorbikes. And my tour guide or my taxi driver, I can't remember who it was, told me some like crazy statistic. It was like 7 million people, no, like 4 million people in the city, 7 million motorbikes. Or maybe it's inverse. Whatever the case was, there are a lot of motorbikes. Because cars are too expensive for the average Vietnamese. And so what you get is a lot of small business owners on motorbikes carrying a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff.
A lot of stuff. Can we emphasize that again?
Yeah. So here's the photo. Hans Kemp is the photographer going around Vietnam taking photos of people just carrying stuff. And this looks like vegetables of some sort. It's 3 times the amount of vegetables as there are people on them. And here's the crazy thing. They stack people on these motorbikes. I saw a family of 5 on a motorbike. And you're like, this can't be. Nobody wears helmets, or very
That's
few wear
unsafe.
helmets. But you know, they have no alternative. So I kind of get it. People die all the time. There's accidents all the time. But I don't know. I mean, look at these bottles.
Yeah. Yeah. See, I had read this article on my phone, and I was looking through the images, obviously super tiny. I couldn't tell what was happening on the motorbike. I just knew there was a lot of stuff. And then when I opened it on my computer, I was like, oh, they're carrying like giant hula hoops and goldfish and live animals. Okay, this is incredible. I love it.
The hula hoops are ridiculous. Because he has
absurd.
to, like, he's putting his arms over the hula hoops to kind of, because you have to, and it looks like he's in a competition for how many hula hoops can I wear, and you know, do it the same. Everybody else has stuff tied down.
Right.
He's got the hula hoops around his body.
He's tying down the hula hoops with his own bare arms.
That's some skill. And you know, if you've ever, like, you know, I ride city bike a lot. I put like a 5-pound bag on the front of the city bike, and I'm having trouble balancing.
Oh, wow, yeah. And that's not even going very fast.
Yeah. You know, and it's funny, you talk about photos, and you can talk about composition and technique and whatnot. And I wouldn't say that these are fantastically composed photos, and the light is just beautiful. These are photos that show you a slice of somebody's life, you know, and they're just like, it's more like anthropology and sociology than it is anything. And here's guys carrying bags of goldfish.
That's amazing. This is my favorite one. Yeah.
We told you there's a lot of photography to look at today. Here is the KKK project at kkkproject.org. It's a effort to document the 21st century Ku Klux Klan. It's a weird topic because you kind of associate the KKK with civil rights movement and extending back into kind of like the early 20th century with lynchings and whatnot. And it just seems weird that, I mean, weird and not weird, because we know obviously racism still exists in a lot of places, but like really cross-burning?
Yeah, it's still
KKK
happening.
still wearing the hoods?
I think it's interesting that the photographer has chosen to do it in black and white. Because it does kind of create a more timeless. Yeah, it makes it look older, but also kind of timeless. You're not sure when these were taken. I mean, these are just terrifying. I'm not sure, and I can't tell if the photographer he's not imposing any of his judgments on it with the images. You really cannot tell if the photographer is part of the Klan or not, honestly. I'm not sure. I don't really like the series, obviously. I mean, it makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're right in that the photographer has just very like normal, like a Klansman with his hood on in a mom and pop store getting some cigarettes or whatever.
Right.
But then there's also these like, you know, nighttime cross-burning scenes where it's like, this is really weird. I can't believe this happened like a month ago or whenever it happened in recent memory.
Right.
And, you know, the other thing that it strikes me is like, speaking completely objectively about this topic, they have kind of a branding problem. Like the hoods, if they're trying to attract new membership, I guess if you're kind of a crazy racist person, then maybe you're like, yeah, the hoods. But I kind of think like in the 21st century, maybe you want to like do things a little bit differently. Get rid of the hoods, get a new like logo. You know?
Get it? Yes.
They need a brand consultant.
Oh gosh.
I had the pleasure of being on the jury for Photoville's The Fence project. Photoville is this cool little, it's almost like a pop-up photo festival where they use shipping containers. And it started in Brooklyn, and inside the shipping containers they get different photographers to submit work. And they started something a few years ago where there was this really long chain link fence that was on the pathway towards the area where the shipping containers were set up. And so they created something called The Fence, where people could submit photos, and then they would print on a very, very large piece of banner all of these different photos. And now they're expanding this fence concept to a couple other cities, Boston being one, and I can't remember what the other one was. At any rate, they asked me to be on the jury this year, and so I got to judge all of this stuff, and I got to see all of this incredible work. First of all, let me tell you something about the judging process, it brought all of these questions to my mind about how to overcome your own biases about what photography is. Like, obviously there's photos that you like. Like for me, like conceptual experimental photography, I'm not the biggest fan. So it was hard for me to kind of look at this stuff and then try to divorce my own predilections from what I was looking at and say, okay, but is this a coherent series? Is it well photographed? Is it telling a story? Does the artist's statement match up with what I'm seeing, etc.? So that was just an interesting process for me. In doing all of that stuff, I came across some work, and we want to share some of that with you. That sort of blew me away. The first is this one, Lindsay Morris. It's a Kickstarter project that was funded. You Are You, a photo book about gender-unique children. So you're seeing a photo of 4 kids, and they look like girls, but they're all boys. And it's a weekend summer camp for gender non-conforming children and their families. And all of the photos are just like boys being girls. And I know it's obviously a very sensitive topic for a lot of people. But, you know, they are of an age where it's not like, to the best of my knowledge, where it's not like a sexual thing for them. It's just like they feel like girls, so they get to dress up like girls. And it's just, you know, for me, when I see pictures of like older transgender and whatnot, like it's almost like a lifestyle choice. And now I'm like, now I know nothing about this stuff. But I see these kids, and there's definitely like an innocence about it, and they're just like hanging out, wearing girls' clothes, and like their families took them there because they recognized their kids were like girls on the inside. So they're letting be girls on the outside, and I just thought it was a really poignant essay.
Yeah, these are beautiful. This is such a moving story. I hadn't heard about this, and it made me sad to learn that the camp is only 1 weekend. I'm like, no, these kids should be, you know, this should be like a full month of them being able to be out there. But the sound bites of them just explaining the way they feel when they're out there is just so moving. I mean, they say that they feel completely comfortable and confident in themselves, which every child should, and it's great that there's a place for them to go to, even just for a week, to feel that way.
Yeah, and the photos look like kid lifestyle photos.
Yeah, they do. They do.
Yeah.
It's very like bright, sunny, just a lot of energy. It's great.
And so I think in that regard, it's sort of, you know, you have to know the backstory to have a deeper appreciation of the photos. This, you know, the judging really got me thinking about this stuff. It was a good exercise to go through. And then another one that I came across, Julia Cybularz, did a story about a girl who has scoliosis and has undergone a bunch of surgeries and physical therapy. And you see some of these photos, like this one just kind of breaks my heart.
Yeah.
Just really moving. And for documentary type photo and photojournalism, we often talk about access and getting the trust of the subject. Obviously, Julia has done her homework here. Just really, really an intimate look at all of this stuff.
Yeah, you can tell that the girl's very comfortable with Julia, as well as the whole family.
So hopefully we'll see these guys up on the fence in Brooklyn or Boston, or maybe it was Atlanta. Check out their stuff. We have all the links to this on YouTube and on our blog at blog.photoshelter.com. Hey, Sarah J., I have a question for you.
What's up?
What do you think you're going to look like when you're 100 years old?
I have no idea. I hope to get to that age.
So I'm going home in a few weeks, back to Hawaii, because my grandmother is turning 99 years old.
Oh, wow.
Her husband, my grandpa, died at 100. So I'm hoping that she makes it another year so that I have 2 grandparents. It's totally selfish, right? 2 grandparents who make it to 100, because I don't know anybody who had 2 grandparents that made it to 100. At any rate, here is photographer Anastasia Pottinger. Her essay is What You'll Look Like at 100, and it's like abstract nudes of people who are 100 years old.
Yeah, yes, completely abstract.
You don't know what you're looking at.
I have no idea what I'm seeing, but I do know that it's skin that has been through a lot.
It's been through a lot. You know, if you know anything about skin, there's like the collagen in your skin, which makes it look so youthful, has broken down a lot, and the fat that also makes you look youthful has kind of gone away, and so you have kind of this leathery texture.
Yeah, it's so different.
Kind of crazy. It's kind of looks like a landscape a little bit.
It does.
But I dig it. You know, it's not the kind of stuff that you want necessarily hanging on your wall, but I do like looking at it.
Yeah. No, they're really beautiful.
Josh Hainer is a New York Times photographer, and he won a Pulitzer. When were those announced? Like 3 weeks ago. The guy won a Pulitzer for the coverage of a Boston marathon bombing survivor and all of the rehabilitation that person went through. The guy went to Stanford. He's a really smart guy. And so then we see, it kind of blew up in social media if you're following a lot of photographers. He invented a streaming backpack. So he saw that all the television guys were able, obviously with their satellite trucks, to broadcast stuff live. And he said, how come we don't have that capability? How come it's like I gotta go to Starbucks after I shoot and then transmit, or I'm in an arena that has Wi-Fi and I'm fighting to get some bandwidth on the Wi-Fi to transmit my photos. So he created a little backpack that multiplexes. That's what we like to call it in the tech biz. Multiplexes the data transfer across multiple cell phones. In case your AT&T isn't working well, but your Verizon is working well. So it breaks up the picture and it sends the picture over in a live feed to his editors. And so now you have this little remarkable little system that lets you transmit it. And he's trying to get it smaller and smaller. So it's in the backpack. I can't remember how much it weighs, like 12 pounds or something. And then now he has like a fanny pack version that weighs like half the weight, etc.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm looking at this stuff and I'm thinking, wow, so innovative. What a talented guy. And then the other part of me says, what the hell? This is the 21st century. We can't transmit photos reliably as they're being shot. It's just, that makes no sense to me. Sarah, it makes no sense to me.
I'm sorry. I know, this is a game changer. It's good that he's doing this.
It's really, you should read kind of the details about it and what the challenges are technically, because it's just stuff you never think about. Because we're so used to like Instagramming and then the photo's up.
Right, you transmit it.
That's how it should work. Well, then again, when you go to like big sporting events, it's just impossible. I go to Yankee Stadium, I take a photo, I'm trying to like tweet it out or Instagram it out, and it's just doesn't work.
Right.
Doesn't work.
I guess automatically transmitting your images as you're shooting to an editor, you kind of got to let go of that control freak side of you. You're just giving them all unedited, no selects.
Well, and if you're a photojournalist, you're used to that anyway.
Yeah.
You're dealing with an editor, and so I would argue that's why you have your Instagram account. That's for you to curate and edit your own story of the world.
Yeah. True.
So there you go. Also on Petapixel this past week, this poster of cameras we use today and how we got there. Starting, well, it talks about camera obscura back before whenever. I don't really count that as the first camera. So, going from
that definitely counts. Come on.
Okay. I'm talking about like silver halide process.
Right.
So starting in like 1835, they go through all of these iterations. A great little, they have stuff like the Hasselblad lunar camera or whatever, but it ends with the Sony Mavica in 1981. The Sony Mavica used, if I'm remembering correctly, 3.5-inch floppy disks.
Wow.
Like old school.
That is very old school.
But 1981 was a long time ago, Sarah.
This is true. It was
33 years ago. So I was thinking, like, what cameras would be added to this? And kind of working in pseudo-reverse, I figured, like, some sort of Litro camera should be on there.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
As being very innovative as a light field camera.
Yeah.
I was thinking maybe the Fuji X100 is its first kind of high quality APS-C camera on there. Probably like the Sony A7. You know, the Nikon D1 has to be up there, or the predecessor to that. I mean, there's so many great digital cameras that will be represented in the next 30 years. And my gosh, that technology moves fast. Canon 5D's got to be up there for all the video stuff.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
Canon shooter.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting when hopefully they'll update this, or maybe we should ask people to like submit what cameras they think should be a part of a short history of photographic cameras.
Hashtag I love photo.
Hashtag I love photo.
What digital camera changed the game?
So many of that. Andy Warhol was like one of the first guys that used the Amiga. In fact, I think he was part of the Amiga for this is like an old computer back in the, oh my gosh, like 80s.
Yeah, you're gonna have to explain to me what the Amiga is.
So there was a company called Commodore that made computers, and the Amiga was one of their flagship computers. And the Amiga, unlike any other computer, was like this color computer, because most of the computers at the time were either grayscale or monochrome.
Right.
The Amiga came along and had like 64,000 colors or something like that, and we were like, oh, it was like 16-bit color. We're like, oh my god, the Amiga. So they hired Warhol to like showcase the capabilities, and so there was like an event where Debbie Harry was his model, and he did some weird thing, quick artist thing where he drew her, or there was some primitive camera, and then he used this fill thing. So anyway, they heard rumors that Warhol might have left some floppy disks around. And there's a Warhol museum in Pittsburgh, so these researchers or filmmakers or whoever they were went to the Warhol museum, and they're like, we heard that there might be some floppy disks. And
give us your floppy disks.
Yeah, and so the guys were like, okay, well, we know nothing about how to do anything with the floppy disks, and you have some connections over at Carnegie Mellon, which is one of the premier computing schools. So they find a couple of disks. They go through this whole thing where they photograph and catalog this stuff. And they're really worried because the disks were sort of degrading. They're 30 years old or so. And so the computer club from Carnegie Mellon, which is like, it sounds like dorks and teenage kids. Well, they are dorks, but they're like PhD dorks. And they're as nerdy as you might expect. But they're also like super cool, right? So they did this whole thing where they copied the disk, and then they did this whole thing where they had their resident Amiga expert. And they used an emulator for this Amiga, and then they pulled a few images off the disk. So the first one they pulled off was this. So it's Venus.
Three-eyed
and
Venus.
This was actually, so the one of the early versions of Adobe Illustrator used like Venus on the cover. And apparently this was a piece of clip art that was also on the Amiga Paint program. And Warhol did a very primitive cut and paste job on the eye and made a third eye.
Wow. Pre-Photoshop. There you go.
Yeah, it's crazy. And he does like a tomato soup can where it's just like drawn with like a scribbly computer pen. Just kind of interesting. Like nothing that's gonna sell for $1 trillion. But just interesting to see this very, very primitive form of computer art. And it was Andy Warhol, who incidentally was shot in our building on the 6th floor. He
was, yep.
The Decker building, yeah. If you ever come by the PhotoShelter offices, well, we can't take you up to the 6th floor, but you can come see the 2nd and 3rd floor.
Yeah, it's the closest you'll ever get to Warhol.
We both independently found, well, I mean, we can't say we found it. It was on BuzzFeed, for God's sake.
This was being passed around by a lot of people. It was popping up on my feed like crazy.
50 completely unexplainable stock photos no one will ever use. And we've seen some similar versions of this concept, right? The most ridiculous stock photos ever.
Mm-hmm.
But this, and
These
normally
are-
I don't look at this stuff, and normally I don't post this stuff, but these were pretty amazing.
Yeah, these are great. These really are unexplainable. I have no idea what was going through the photographer's mind at the time of this shot.
Here's a nun wearing swim goggles, praying to a fish.
Praying to a fish.
Here's crash test dummies in a forbidden romance. A woman haunted by the ghost of hamburgers. I mean, I just don't understand.
I don't understand.
And
Who
it's
hired them?
these types of photos that give stock photography a bad name.
You're right. It's totally true. People think of stock photography, they think of this crap. It's just terrible.
And look, I don't want to point fingers at our friends over at Shutterstock, but a lot of this stuff is coming from Shutterstock. Fat
Shutterstock,
Santa,
explain yourself.
yeah, Fat Santa pinching his nipples. How did that get approved?
I don't know. I feel like they need to create their own collection, and they need to brand it just as seriously as like Getty's Lean In. They need to be like, look, there really was a space needed for weird stock photos, and we've created the perfect collection.
I'm trying to also understand in which context. You're the photographer. You come up with this concept. You hire a model. Maybe it's your brother. I don't know. At any rate, you arranged for a model to come to your studio. You set up lights. You got a prop. And then you had to direct them to be like, okay, here's my concept. It's Santa with no shirt on pinching his nipples.
You'd think at some point someone on set would be like, I'm not seeing where we're going. Yeah.
Yeah, why don't we just leave it at that? Last week we ended with Bodhi, the menswear fashion dog.
Oh, yeah. Cutest dog ever.
Cutest dog ever. That couple whose name is escaping me, and their little Shiba Inu dog, they dressed up and went viral and got to quit their jobs and get to do Shiba Inu the whole time. And I remember when the menswear dog came out a year ago or whatnot, thinking, wow, that's so creative. Dressing up that dog, that good-looking dog, in menswear clothing, like shot like a GQ cover. And then I'm over at the Atlantic last night, preparing for I Love Photography, and I see this. I gotta share the screen so you can see it.
Yeah, let's see this.
I see this story, and it's called "Cats and Dogs Dressed as People 100 Years Ago."
Oh, wow.
Okay, so these are 100-year-old photos of cats and dogs dressed up as people. And here's a little cat wearing a dress bowling.
And the cat's standing on its
Cat's
two
standing.
legs? How'd they make him do that?
Here's a little dog playing a violin. Now, granted, I think the styling isn't as good as menswear dog. But the use of props, miniature props like chairs and a tiny telephone.
Way better.
Way better.
Way better. These
Way
are some Instagram gold right here. This could...
Yeah, and this is from the Library of Congress, so I don't know if it's in the public domain, but maybe you could, start your own cats and dogs in human clothing Instagram.
Wow. I wonder if the Library of Congress knew they were sitting on this gold.
You got to think there's we love our found photos, like the found Warhol.
Right.
You got to think there's so much photo magic out there.
There really is.
The other thing that strikes me is how many photos do we take as a society? There've got to be so many great photos that nobody ever gets to see. And there are so many photos of you that you'll never get to see in your lifetime.
How do you mean?
From security cameras, or you were walking and somebody was taking a photo and you're in the background of the photo.
Oh, I never thought about that. That's a little overwhelming.
It is overwhelming, but I would love, what if on your deathbed you got this album and it was the 5,000 best photos taken of you that you never knew existed?
Is that your death wish?
That would be kind of like a dream. And we're, with face recognition and the NSA, I think we're getting close to that.
You know what?
That could be a reality.
It could be a reality. That is freaky.
That might be the new business venture. Deathbed photos.
Oh my god.
Deathbed photos you've never seen before.
Oh Oh, terrible.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's it for another episode of I Love Photography. I promise we won't end with animals dressed as people next week.
Okay.
That's my
Okay.
promise to you.
All right. Good. Good.
But I do promise that we'll see some fine photography again.
We will. You're gonna have to find a co-host, Alan. I'm out next week.
Oh, you're out again? Back to Andrew Fingerman?
Yeah, we're gonna have to wrangle in Andrew.
Okay, we'll survive a week without you. Have a good trip to wherever you're going, and we'll see you in like 2 weeks.
All right. Sounds good.
So for Sarah Jacobs, this is Murabayashi with another episode of I Love Photo, #I Love Photo. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.